It seemed simple enough, but then again, it always does. You were to accompany a shipment of grain from the imperial capital of Vantana's, Woodsmuir, to the distant port of Samelid. You were only brought along in the event of an attack by pirates, though the Empire would like people to believe its trade routes were invincible. Still, better for them to risk some no-name adventurers than actual soldiers. 3 days out, the storm hit. You were batted around the open ocean like a child's toy until a bolt of lightning struck the mast and cleaved the boat in half. Clinging grimly to a piece of the mast, you floated through the choppy sea until a monstrous wave finally pulled you under. You washed up on the shore of an unrecognizable island, your possessions miraculously intact. A day's search revealed no other survivors and no sign of settlement. Scavenging around the island, you were surviving just fine after a few days. Then a ship appeared on the horizon. Once you confirmed that it wasn't a mirage, you put together the biggest signal fire you could and waited. The ship seemed to see you, and while you never got any sort of signal in return, it soon dropped anchor just a short way off the coast. You prod the smoldering remains of your signal fire. It's not very hot. Fortunately, you won't be needing it anymore. You cheerfully leave your dismal little camp behind, ready to hop onto the awaiting ship and sail back to civilization. From here, you can barely make out the deck of the ship, but you're fairly sure you can see figures moving around. Hopefully, they've seen you. In most situations like this that you've heard of, the ship sends out a smaller boat to collect passengers. However, after waiting for the better part of an hour, it seems clear that they aren't sending anything. It looks like you'll have to swim out to the boat. You can't help but feel a little strange as you swim out into the cove. In all your time adventuring, which admittedly isn't very much, you've never heard of anyone swimming out to meet a strange ship. Still, it's your best chance to get off this godforsaken rock, so you keep flailing out towards the ship. As you near the ship, you remember why you've never heard of adventurers swimming. Your gear is doing a good job of dragging you down, and it's difficult just to tread water. When you reach the side of the boat and don't find a rope, you start to panic. Just when you think you're going to lose consciousness, you feel someone or something lifting you out of the water. Relieved, you pass out. You finally come to, soaking wet and plastered to the floor of a dark and moldy cabin. It's times like this that really make you glad to be an adventurer. Looking out your cabin's window, all you can see is a dark and stormy ocean. The ship is moving somewhere, judging from the amount of sea spray coming in through the window. So far, you're wishing that you had stayed on the island. At least it was warm there. Unsurprisingly, this door is locked. Your would-be rescuers seem less than benevolent now. Still, the lock looks old and a little rusty. You might have gotten lucky this time. You can try to bash down the door, or you can try to pick the lock if you have a lockpick. Try to pick the lock. That's not good. Broken bones and bloodstains don't usually signal friendly intentions. You can hear someone or something moving around on the other side of this door. However, the noise from the ship and the ocean make it impossible to tell what it is. Regardless, the door is locked and you don't have the key that opens it. You can try and bash the door down, or you can try to pick the lock if you have a lockpick. Leave the door alone. As you carefully walk down the hall, the only sounds you hear are the creaking of the ship's timbers and the waves crashing into the ship. And then you see the bodies. Someone has clearly been busy down here, judging from the condition of the corpses. They look vaguely humanoid, but it's hard to tell. Very slowly, the battered and bloodied corpses in the chamber begin to get up and shamble around. Or, in the case of the hanging skeletons, carefully detach themselves from their beams. It's a grisly sight. This door looks odd in that you can't see any hinges, or a lock, or a doorknob. It almost seems like a section of wall that was painted differently. You're not sure how to open it, but you know the standard adventurer procedure. When there's no lock, just try to bash it down. Try to bash it down. You read the sign. Storage. The rest of the sign is illegible. You enter the storeroom for the ship, expecting to find food, supplies, something useful. Instead, you find rats. A lot of rats. They look hungry, and you're probably the first fresh meat they've seen in a long time. A magical barrier blocks the stairs here. Someone must have gone to great lengths to confine you to the lower levels of the ship. The frame of this door looks slightly splintered, as if someone has tried to bash it down before. The lock also looks like it has been damaged in the past. Still, the door is locked and you don't have the key that opens it. You can try and bash the door down, or you can try to pick the lock if you have a lockpick. Try to bash it down. The purpose of this room seems fairly clear, judging from the frightening array of tools scattered around the floor. You're beginning to understand the fate your gracious hosts probably had in mind for you when they pulled you aboard. Hopefully, you can keep that from happening. As before, the mangled corpses in this chamber object to your intrusion. Strongly. Out of the corner of your eye, you see a door open. It definitely wasn't open before. Then you hear a voice shouting in a foreign tongue. You don't recognize it, but it sounds like swearing. As your foe falls to the ground, he drops a key. You take it. Unlike every other corpse on this ship, this one seems completely inert, and thus it is very unlikely to attack you. The ghost in charge must have even beaten the unlife out of it. This room contains a corpse and little else. Probably another victim of your hosts. The corpse then stands up and looks at you hungrily. This room contains a corpse and little else. Probably another victim of your hosts. The corpse then stands up and looks at you hungrily. At last, you found another living person on this floating chunk of refuse. A woman who appears to be an Empire captain very nearly cries upon seeing you. From what you can see, her skin is covered with cuts and bruises.
Thank God, another living soul. I thought there was nothing left for me to do but say my final prayers and kill myself. Now we might just be able to get out of here. The name's Samantha. Captain Samantha L. Jackson of the Empire Army.
How did you get here?
I expect it was the same way that you got here. I was part of an expedition to see if we could mine anything useful from the islands off the coast of Izo, and we got caught in a storm on the way back. The ship sank and I got picked up. I woke up on board the ship, and I got dragged down here pretty quickly.
Are you okay? She stares dumbfounded at you.
What kind of stupid question is that? I'm alive, that's all. Compared to the others on the ship, I'm fine. They torture each other. Dead or undead, it doesn't matter. Nothing but pain on this ship.
Are you ready to escape?
Well, as long as the ghost in charge of the brig is gone, that's the one who does all the torturing.
She rolls up a sleeve, revealing a particularly nasty and jagged scar.
He took the better part of a day carving this one. I'm not leaving this room while that bastard's still floating around.
I killed that ghost. You show Captain Samantha the key you got from killing the ghost.
Well, that changes everything,
she says, pulling a dented short sword out from under her bunk.
Just give me a moment to collect myself, and then I'll be ready to exorcise some spirits with you.
Captain Samantha paces the room anxiously, waiting for you to give the all clear. All right, let's go. Captain Samantha falls in line behind you, ready for action.
Let's do this. I have had it with these goddamn ghosts on this goddamned boat.
Captain Samantha has joined the party. Captain Samantha approaches the barrier and starts waving her arms around in a way that makes you worry for her mental well-being.
When I was brought down here, I remember one of the ghosts making these gestures. It made the barrier disappear.
Fortunately, it works. You have her repeat the ridiculous gestures a few times so that you can remember them. You read the sign, Armory. The rest of the sign is illegible. You try to open this door, but it's stuck. Not locked, just jammed enough that you're not sure if you can open it. Still, being an adventurer, you can always try to bash it down by using your strongest character. What do? Try to bash it down. Whoever this used to be, they probably got trapped in here by the jammed door. Looks like they've been here for a while. Faced with another barrier, you try the ridiculous gestures that Captain Samantha showed you. However, all you succeed in doing is embarrassing yourself. It seems that not all the barriers on this ship will be that easy to deal with. There are some stairs here. Climb the stairs. You can hear voices now. You might finally be able to find out who's in charge of this horrible vessel. Captain Samantha motions for you to be quiet.
You hear them? These are probably the ones that threw us in the brig. And it sounds like there's a lot of them.
The corridor suddenly feels colder. For a second, you think about jumping back down the stairs, but you're not fast enough. The ghost stares straight through you for a second as if it isn't used to looking at the living. Then it shouts something you can't understand. Something whips the curtains aside, revealing a room full of ghosts. It seems you've been discovered. This looks surprisingly like a mess hall, something that you wouldn't expect to find on a ship with a dead crew. Of course, it's even stranger that there are still some crew members in here, despite the fact that their plates and flagons are empty. It seems that some habits die hard. There's a ladder here. Climb the ladder. When you reach the top, you run up against a locked trapdoor. You don't have the key, and you don't like the idea of trying to pick the lock upside down at the top of a tall ladder. Like almost every mess hall you've ever been in, this one has a kitchen and a cook. And also, like nearly every mess hall you've been in, the cook is not happy with your intrusion. You're not exactly sure why, but it seems that the chef has been working on a rather large pot of soup. It has a pale, milky color that you normally wouldn't associate with soup. Also, it seems to be radiating some sort of magical energy. It doesn't feel malevolent, but it's always hard to tell with soup. There's a ladle chained to the pot. If you wanted, you could sample the soup. Leave it alone. As you move along the ship, you start to wonder how good your chances are of actually getting off the ship. Even if you clear out every single monster, you can't possibly hope to guide the ship somewhere safe. You don't even know where you are, much less which direction you should go in. Of course, if that means you're stuck on the ship, you might as well keep on evicting the original owners. With a painful creak, a nearby door opens. With a painful creak, a nearby door opens. By now, you're certain that the ghosts know you're here, so you try to move as quietly as possible. Then, as you round the corner, you find another set of barriers. Before you can stop yourself, you curse loudly. After a short, tense pause, the doors at the end of the hall swing open, revealing several well-armed ghosts. You frantically run through the gestures Captain Samantha taught you, but nothing happens. A tiny, annoying part of your brain wonders if an incorporeal sword will still hurt. As you strike a killing blow, the ghost shouts something you can't understand. You're not sure if it was a death screech, calling out an alarm, or some sinister curse. Either way, it seems that the death of the guard captain has dispelled the barrier blocking the stairs. Unlike seemingly every other corpse on this ship, this one seems completely inert, and thus it is very unlikely to attack you. Someone must have beaten the unlife out of it. You try a ladle full of soup and wait. At first, it doesn't taste like much of anything, and later it still doesn't. But then a strange warm feeling starts spreading through your body. A couple more servings later, and you feel completely refreshed. Then you realize that you've managed to drain the entire pot of soup. It's a shame, because you don't even really know what it tasted like. With a painful creak, a nearby door opens. With a painful creak, a nearby door opens. There are some stairs here. Climb the stairs. You finally emerge onto the deck of the ship, and you are greeted by flashes of lightning and thunder. The ship is clearly in the middle of a very strong storm, though no rain is falling yet. Between the thunder and the sea swells, it's getting hard to hear. This doesn't stop you, however, from noticing the deckhands shouting incoherently. As the ghosts draw translucent daggers, You notice the bones that seem to litter the deck. This is not a good thing. A set of heavy wooden doors is set into the deck here. You try opening them, but they're locked. You could try forcing them open, or you could try picking the lock. Try to pick the lock. You manage to get the doors open, revealing a set of stairs leading back down into the ship. There are some stairs here. Climb the stairs. As you descend into the rough center of the ship, you find what amounts to a storeroom complete with hungry-looking spiders. Lucky for you, these runes have been scratched out, probably by the spiders. You won't have to worry about barriers here. There are some stairs here. Climb the stairs. As you descend to what looks like the lowest cargo hold, you hear something drunkenly snicker off in the darkness. You can't see anything. This is not good. Finally, the cargo hold falls silent. All you can hear now is the occasional creaking of timbers. There are some stairs here. Climb the stairs. There are some stairs here. Climb the stairs. A chill wind picks up as you make your way across the deck, cutting straight through your armor. The wind is strong enough that it's able to shuffle loose bones around the deck. Then, for just a minute, the wind dies down and the bones continue moving. A freshly assembled group of skeletons begin to shamble towards you, clutching broken weapons and shields. Their bones have been at the same time preserved and warped by the sea salt, but they don't look very sturdy. Still, they block your path along the ship. As you reduce some skeletons to their constituent bones, you begin to think this will be easy. However, a rattling sound soon catches your attention. The bones are quickly reassembling themselves into full skeletons. As you reach the edge of the bone piles, you encounter a welcome sight: the ship's wheel. At the very least, this means that the ship can be steered back to a safe harbor where you can find a priest. Then, a tall cloaked figure fades into view ahead of you. It seems that the wheel is already manned. However, if you want to do anything with the wheel, you should probably work your way out of the field of bones. You hear a grunt from behind you, and suddenly Captain Samantha has vaulted past the skeletons onto the steps ahead of you.
Hurry, we can't hang about all day.
Now that you've gotten away from the piles of bones, the skeletons fall apart and clatter to the deck harmlessly. A figure with long robes stands in front of the ship's wheel, or rather, floats in front of the ship's wheel. You can't see any feet under the robe. The robe itself is black. In fact, it somehow looks darker than black. You've heard sages say that black is really just the absence of light, but this color seems to be the complete opposite of light. It stares at you, or at least you think it does. You can't see its eyes, and it makes you feel uncomfortable. Hello? You attempt to greet the figure, hoping that the sign of goodwill will convince it not to try and kill you. However, after trying several different greetings that you've picked up in your travels, the figure doesn't respond. Exasperated, you resort to hand gestures. But finally, when you're about to start throwing obscene gestures at it, the figure speaks. Of course, like just about everything else on this boat, you can't understand a word it's saying. It doesn't sound even remotely like anything you've heard before. You're not even sure some of the sounds it makes can be made by humans. I don't understand. What are you saying? The figure doesn't seem to register your response. However, after neither of you speak for a good minute or two, it lifts an arm and points at your head. You cringe, expecting the worst. But then, your mind fills with a series of highly detailed images, to the point where it's almost hard to actually understand any of them. However, they soon assemble themselves in proper order, and you watch them. You see a robed figure, definitely a living human, unlike the figure before you, at the wheel of the ship, one decidedly brighter than this. Then the image dissolves into a stormy sea, with a fearsome-looking man wielding two scimitars. The man with the blades stalks up and down the deck, and then a flash of lighting shows him killing a member of the crew. The man goes on to kill the entire crew before advancing on the robed helmsman. As the man brings a blade down onto the helmsman, a bolt of lightning obscures the view, which is followed by the sight of the ship, the one you're on now, plowing through a thick storm. The robed figure pulls its arm back, and the images fade. When you approach this door, it discharges a small bolt of electricity that strikes you. It stings a little, but it's not that bad. On a hunch, you kick a loose bone over towards the door. When it hits the door, it is instantly reduced to a small pile of black dust. Might not be a good idea to use that door yet. The robed figure still floats motionless in front of the wheel, seeming to survey the ship. When its eyes pass over you, you feel your skin turn clammy. Picture yourself swimming away from the ship. The figure again points at your head, and you see a very clear image of yourself being eaten by sharks. Picture yourself taking the wheel and steering yourself. The figure again points at your head, and you see a clear image of yourself lying face down on the deck, lying in a puddle of what is probably your own blood. Picture the ship sailing off to a friendly harbor. The figure again points at your head, and you see a fleeting image of the man with two swords, followed by a flash of lightning. After that, all you can see is the ship forever circling a dark sea. Picture the figure killing the man with two swords. The figure again points at your head, and you see a hazy image of the robed figure and the man with two swords fighting on the deck. The battle rages on for a few minutes, and then all you see is the figure steering the ship again. Picture yourself killing the man with two swords. The figure points not at you, but down onto the lower level of the deck. You hear the sound of a door unlocking. Next, the figure points down at the piles of bones on the deck, and the rattling sound you've been growing accustomed to ceases. Last, the figure points at you. A blurry image fills your mind, where you stand in a dark room with the man wielding two swords. The man shouts something, then the image melts into the sight of the ship sailing off into a sunset. Now that the cloaked figure has unlocked this door, you feel much safer using it. However, if the figure was telling the truth, then you'll have quite a fight ahead of you. Do you enter the door? Enter. You enter the dark and musty chamber, passing by a few rotting pots full of salt water. Smells like death, plain and simple. Suddenly, the air becomes dry as a bone, and you hear a sound like a whip crack. A strange mist begins to coalesce on the floor. This particular ghost seems almost pleased by your presence, although the maniacal grin it displays is of some concern, as are the two wickedly sharp blades it wields, which seem to trail some sort of spectral energy. Cocking its head at what would be a jaunty angle among the living, it says something, Just like every single damn spirit on this ship, you can't understand it. It seems to wait for a response. Unsatisfied by your complete ignorance of its language, it lunges at you, blades twirling. The captain bellows something incoherent, and you feel the air in the room crackle. The beam strikes Scruffed, who cries out in pain and sinks to one knee. The captain's swords soundlessly fall to the floor and almost instantly disappear. The captain, on the other hand, utters a long string of what is probably cursing. In your experience, it normally is. As the edges of the captain's form start to shimmer and fade, a low keening sound reaches your ears. It seems to be coming from the ship itself. The sound starts rising in pitch until you can't hear it anymore, at which point the captain finally disappears. It feels as if a heavy pressure has lifted from your mind. Captain Samantha turns to you, a wide grin on her face.
We did it. Now we'll finally be able to get back to the Empire.
Now that the barriers have fallen, you can get a good look at the captain's quarters. As you would expect, the room is in an advanced state of disrepair, and the smell of mildew hangs heavy in the air. When you open the chest, you find a key hooked to the underside of the lid. You take it. You open up the trapdoor and find a shaft underneath it. There is a ladder underneath it too. You can descend if you want. Climb down. You enter what appears to be a storeroom, one which hasn't been opened in a long time. As with everywhere else on the ship, the smell of mildew is overpowering. There's a ladder here. Climb the ladder. There are some stairs here. Climb the stairs. It's not as if you really know what with the apparent language barrier and all. but you feel as if you just took down the spirit in charge on this boat. And now, as you stumble around on the deck, you can't help but think that you might yet get home. No sooner does this thought cross your mind than a gale-force wind rips across the deck, scattering loose bones everywhere. The familiar figure of the helmsman floats before you. It extends an arm towards you, and you briefly glimpse an image of the ship sailing towards a sunlit island and, more importantly, a crowded harbor. Then, the image dissolves and you are left on the deck of a ship surrounded by crumbled skeletons and a robed figure who makes your skin crawl. The figure points at the now unattended wheel. Before you have a chance to say, think, or do anything, the figure turns and starts gliding away. Without even acknowledging you, the robed figure simply disappears from the deck of the ship, making you wonder if it was ever really here. You reach the unoccupied wheel and start scanning the horizon. As you expected, you have no idea where you are. A storm continues to brew over your head. With the helmsman gone and the ship's captain defeated by Empire Maritime Law, this ship is as good as yours. What do? Sail away. Since you have no idea where you actually are, you decide that just picking a direction and sticking with it should see you back to somewhere civilized. But before you can pick a random direction, an image forms in your mind. You see the ship sailing towards a sunlit island and, more importantly, a busy harbor. When the image fades, you find yourself gripping the wheel and holding the ship to a course. Never one to ignore a positive omen, you maintain that course. A day later, you leave the storm behind. The day after that, you find yourself sailing into the same dock at Woodsmuir from which you originally departed. Of course, nobody believes your story. The end.